And we are live with Suzanne Worthley today. Hello, guys. Julie and Lady K and Blue Crescent Tara. Welcome, and thank you guys for joining us. I'm just going to give it a few moments, see a couple more enter, and I did pin her website in the chat. Hopefully it's still there. If not, I can re-enter it, but alrighty. So, I guess we'll just get started. People will probably roll in shortly. Oh, hi, Maria, too. So can you tell us a bit about your website, and do you have any other platforms that you use or like to work on?
Sure. And first, thanks for having me, and thanks to Julie, especially if she's on here too for the connection. Appreciate it. Yeah. I actually, Courtney, only really do my website. I stepped back from everything else in social media within the last year, as did several people. I obviously still have just a Facebook kind of a thing, but don't do a whole lot on that because there's so much going on with social media. So my website is basically my main drive, and it is just technically my name. So it's www.SWORTHLEY, so S Worthley. So everything I do basically drives through there. And once somebody's on my mailing list anyway, that they can do through an actual, website, they'll get everything and anything that I do. So it just seems to be easier right now with all the stuff going on social media wise, right?
Yeah. It's kind of chaotic, so I can understand that. Do you know your zodiac sign, sun, moon, and rising?
You know, it's so funny when we looked at some of the materials before we were actually chatting, and that's the one thing out of all the gazillions of things that I do in divination, astrology is probably my weakest link. I do know that I'm a Sagittarius, and that's about it. So I don't know my sun. I don't know my moon. I do know, however, that I've only had my chart done twice in my entire life. And both of the people that read my chart said literally, like, who are you? What? I've never seen a chart like this. So I guess I have a very galactic chart. I don't know what that means. I know I have a ton of fire in it. But yeah, a couple of people that are very high caliber actual astrologers did my chart. And the one from Sedona goes, I don't even know what to say. So I don't know what that means, but it must be a weird chart.
Yeah. I guess some people are finding like starseed marks in them and stuff with the degrees. Not sure how it works yet, but
I think that might be what mine was, because they kept saying the word galactic. And I think that especially this particular gal was not totally aligned with too much cosmic stuff, much more earth oriented. So I think I was kind of a quandary to her. So I don't know. So I apologize that I don't know suns and moons, but it's the one thing I don't know. I don't do it. So
yeah, I'm new to it. So now I just kind of ask everyone because I have a small obsession, I think. So I'm like, what are you?
I have a daughter that's kind of new to it too, and she totally nails everybody, and she does the flippant, well, of course, because he or she's the blah blah, and so it's kind of cute. So I like that.
Hi guys, thank you for joining. So I read that you have a pretty interesting childhood as a daughter of a mortician. Can we talk a bit about that?
Can we start there, right?
Yeah, okay. I was interested to know what that'd be like.
For me, being very young, my dad had his own funeral home, and being young, we would go and hang out in the funeral home. I know that sounds weird to some people, but that was my normal. We took piano lessons across the street. And so 3 out of the 6 children would be at the funeral home on Saturday, and we'd all rotate towards, the piano lesson, and we'd hang out in the funeral home when it wasn't our turn per se. And, I didn't know anything other than that as normal. And I think that it was amazing in terms of being introduced to death and dying so soon and having that be conversation at dinner. To me, it would be equated to whatever your family's livelihood was. And if you talked about, electronic parts, that was your thing. And ours was just death. And for me, that was very, very normal. But it opened up very early on a different perspective of everything and no fear of death. And I'm not joking. We would be in the family car, you know, and pour out of the hearse. 6 children would pour out of the hearse. And that was our family car. And so, and sometimes we would go help Dad pick up a body. And so all of that stuff was so completely normal that there was never a fear of death, which then, of course, was really awesome for me to springboard into doing hospice work and death and dying work and healing work without any fear of or any question of the beyond. And so for me, it was, I think, a beautiful entree. You know, in my opinion, you pick your family before we come in. And I definitely picked my family for a purpose. And so I think, to me, it makes perfect sense. It was a little weird in school. I didn't know I was the weird kid until the older I got. But then I was kind of the cool kid, because then my dad would come and do presentations on death and dying and everybody'd be like, whoa. So, you know, it would flip and flop. Sometimes it was cool. Sometimes I was the weirdo. So it all worked.
I was weird too, don't worry. But
oh, I'm never worried.
I can remember I used to work for a funeral home in high school. I wanted to bring the hearse to my prom, but they wouldn't let me. I was one of those type of people, so I would have loved it.
I have 4 kids, and my oldest wanted a hearse really bad when he was in college age, and my father got him a used one, and he painted the hearse Rastafarian style. And when we brought him to college for the first time, he literally pulled up in a Rastafarian painted hearse to unload his equipment for college, and everybody's mouths were just on the ground like, what is happening here? So yeah, even us, that was like a normal car in my own children's lives. So yeah, I don't know. I think it puts a spin of fun on things, right?
Yeah, I love it so much. You said you had quite a few paranormal experiences as well. Can you want to start with maybe the dead first? Have you ever seen like spirits or things like that?
Yeah, I think we'll get into the alien part afterwards. So I'll skip the alien part in childhood. The dead thing, in terms of actually ghosts and spirits, I have had a very active house where we live now. I raised my 4 kids in here. We've been in this house probably, 30 plus years. And because of my work and because of what I do, I have an extremely active home. And it's funny because when it is your home, you don't necessarily feel the activity as much, but you sometimes obviously do. And there has been evenings where, I'm not exaggerating, that I've seen things slide across the counter just a smidge, or you know, whatever. So the activity has been very strong, but never malevolent. I didn't realize the portals that were in my home at the very beginning. So that was a little bit of a struggle back before I was completely on track and reawakened, if we want to use that wording. But there's definitely my norm in raising my children. My daughter is extremely psychic. I have 3 sons and then a daughter. And our normal in the Worthley house would be like, Mom, can you get the dead lady out of the hallway? I'm trying to do my homework. You know, that would be like, yeah, that would be like our normal. So we'd be riding in the car, Mom, there's a dead person behind us trying to get our attention. So she has a different sort of a psychic ability in terms of actually her sight. Mine is inner sight, Claire inner vision. Mm-hmm. She has the ability to see a little bit more outer. So I've always had just a tad of envy on that, because I don't necessarily see as much of outer dead, meaning apparition in full. I've had them, but I don't see as much of that. And so she does more of that. But definitely, you know, I do a ton of work at a haunted hotel in Minnesota here, and it's called the Palmer House. There's 2 Palmer houses. There's one, I believe, in Chicago, and that's not the one. The one in Minnesota is extremely haunted. It's on the historical register. And I've worked at the Palmer House for years and done, I don't know how many events. I do an annual one. I used to do a lot more, but I pulled back to 1. And through that work, I do a whole weekend of what we call a spirit search, where I train people in terms of how we connect. And I've seen so many apparitions there, from full-blown apparitions to, of course, playing with all the equipment, to all kinds of things. And so Palmer House is definitely, you know, the mecca of where we have awesome, huge experiences. So it's been with me for a long, long time, you know, and it's gotten only stronger as years have gone by.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is, like, I feel like a lot in common with your daughter, but also like my grandmother kind of has your ability too. And I have 4 kids, so.
Oh, that's awesome. Soul connection.
Right? I'm like,
that's cool.
Have you ever seen any types of entities or beings that you saw and were kind of unexplainable or kind of became like a shock to you? The next one's about like experiences with UFOs or ETs. So if whichever you want to, it kind of ties in.
I'm going to maybe just combine them. When I was really, really tiny, only like 5 and 6 years old, my normal, unbeknownst to me that it wasn't normal for everyone, I had big, huge heads on my ceiling. We had a dormered ceiling, you know, the slanted ceiling. And at that age, I shared a bed with my sister because that's what you did back then. And, you know, us 2 little peanuts would be in the queen bed together. And I would have these 3 alien heads that looked very much like skulls be on my ceiling every night. Well, almost every night. And the main head in the middle would be looking at me. And then there was 2 peripheral sides to them looking at that. And the one in the middle was very greenish hued, and these were whitish hued. And they would have telepathic communication with me all the time, like all the time. And I didn't have any like worry or concern. I thought that everybody did that. And then there were other nights when these different beings would come in and they would morph all over my ceiling. And I knew intuitively that these were the scary guys, that these were the bad guys. And I would hide under my covers as a very small child and go, oh, I'm supposed to not be by those guys. And so these felt intimidating and scary, and the other ones felt very protective. And at much to the norm of a starseed, I was very sick at age 6. And lots of starseeds have a either health issue or something happened to their body. And I had a unknown blood disease at age 6 that came out of nowhere. And of course, the only one out of the 6 kids that something happened to, because I'm literally the only alien in the family. And overnight had this amazingly weird blood disease that they couldn't diagnose for almost over a year. And the 3 heads would tell me, everything's fine. We're working on you. We're working on your blood. You're okay. We're taking care of you. And then I would know again intuitively when the other guys came that they were the ones that were trying to screw up the blood system. And so it was very comfortable for me. And I know that might sound a little odd to people, but I trusted the heads a lot. And as a small child, I was very confused because I was getting dragged to the hospital on a weekly basis. And I could hear a lot of the hospital. I would astral project right out of my body and go out into the other part of the hallway and listen to these nurses going, oh, it's so sad that little girl's probably going to die. And I'm like, oh my God, somebody's going to die. That's so sad. And then I'm like, oh, that's me. And then I would laugh because I'm like, well, I'm not going to die. The head said that I'm fine, you know? And the same thing would happen with my parents. I would hear them crying downstairs and I could, you know, never understand why everyone thought I was not okay because I knew I was taken care of. And then lo and behold, just literally overnight, it went away and everything was gone. So they never did diagnose what happened. It took almost a year. And that was my huge experience. So those alien heads were very comfortable for me for a really long time. That all went away for many, many, many years. And then when I reactivated in my 30s and I started doing healing work, I started to then see all kinds of beings. And I'm going to tell you, you know, there isn't a lot of training in this for many people. At least back then there wasn't. And the first time when I saw insectoids come into my room, I was straight up, I was terrified. I'm like, what the hell is that? I mean, it looked like a lot of them that were the praying mantis people. I'd see them with like a backpack on and it looked like Ghostbusters where they'd have this thing come out, you know, and I'm like, am I losing my mind completely? I would see all kinds of light beings. I would see mishmashes of reptilians. I mean, I saw it all at the beginning, and I was, not to mention the typical gray, you know, but I went through a lot of years where it was like, I was very alone in this and I was very terrified. And this is a long time ago. I've been doing this for quite a while now. So now pretty much, and I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but pretty much nothing scares me. But you know, I still think if I walked around the corner and there was a full apparition of a Draco standing in my room, like 3D apparition, I might scream, you know, at least for a moment. So.
Wow. So how did you deal with kind of, I'm just trying to wrap my mind
I'm listening
around
to myself going, I don't even know how I dealt with it, right?
Well, but it makes sense to me because I've had similar experiences since like last year. So I'm like, wow, but for you, I'm trying to think someone, because now I have friends or people I can reach out to, you know, that have similar experiences, but you kind of had to like adapt to this.
I was
alone.
on my own. Yeah. I was pretty much on my own because there wasn't even energy workers and or healers that were really very alien, except for I did go to two different people. One was a gentleman and one was a woman. And this is way back at the beginning again, because I had no context to work from. There was nothing that was making sense to me. Right. And my download was coming so fast. And we'll talk about that probably in a bit. But I did meet, I got referred to a gal. Back then, she was probably my age now. And she channeled a lot of galactic beings. And I went to one of her, what we would call more galleries kind of a thing. You know, you just go and pay your $10 or whatever and sit in the audience. Right. And afterwards, she came up to me and she said, you might want to come and see me individually, because she could tell that something was going on. And I did have a meeting with her. And I remember going to this meeting and I'm driving there and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to say to this woman? Because I think I'm going nuts, you know? Right. And I remember sitting in her office. This is so vivid to me and so many years ago. And I said, I think, and this is not arrogance, so be clear. I said, I think you don't understand how powerful I am. And I said, I'm scared to do this because of the power. And I looked across her beautiful office and there was this gorgeous green glass bowl, and it was like a hand blown glass bowl. And I looked at her and I said, I know I could blow that bowl up with my mind if I practice. You don't understand how scared I am. And she goes, oh, most definitely. I know you can. And she goes, and then she leaned in so gently and she said, but why would you? And that day, Courtney, was the turning point for me to go, oh, wait, you mean there's free will involved in this? You know, I actually have some ownership to this. And so that one line from that woman really gave me the graceful experience to be able to step back and go, just because this is really crazy big stuff doesn't mean I have to go nuts over it. And then my second person that was alien related that really helped me out was a gentleman up in north of us in the cities here, and didn't know him from Adam. Went and had a session, but this one kind of scared me even more because I had never had a session before. And I sat in this session and went completely out of body, and I went straight to the Galactic Federation. And for me, with, again, no context, I didn't know what was happening. And I could draw it clear as a bell to this day. I was in a honeycomb kind of a situation with these little pods, and everybody was different races. Yeah, it's your face. Been there, right?
I channeled that.
Yeah. And I was standing in the middle, and it's much like the scene in Harry Potter, by the way. Harry Potter has a very similar scene when they go to the council, and they stand in the middle on that platform, and Dumbledore or whomever, Harry or whomever was on that with a microphone talking. That's how I was. And I was in the middle, and I was getting instructions from the Galactic Federation. And then they showed me lots of planetary destruction, et cetera. So for me, that was kind of I don't know, a positive and negative experience at once, because it opened everything up so fast that I'm like, oh my freaking God, I don't know what to do with this, you know? So it was scary. And the same thing happened to me. The very first awakening for the alien world was a expo, and I walked into a booth that had a giant crystal skull. And I mean, I'm talking giant. This guy is no longer on this planet, but I wonder what happened to his skull. He was from Chicago. It was a 65-pound crystal skull, and you put your forehead on its forehead to kind of mind meld. And my sisters did it, and they're all like, oh, that was fun. Oh, that was fun. And I did it, and I flew off of this thing. And this is way at the beginning of my journey. And I was standing there with my mouth hanging open in the booth, and the guy goes, what'd you see? And I go, nothing. And he's like, what did you see? And I go, nothing, because all it was grays. And I mean, like, grays. And I'm going to tip down. I showed this to Courtney before. This is who they were. There was everybody in my peripheral vision in that experience. And I was like, oh my God. And he goes, whoever you saw is who you really are. And I said, oh, no. And again, I was very young and very naive and had no validation to any of this other than I thought I was insane. So that's what started the activation. Actually, that particular skull experience was when they all started to come back. And then the trajectory was just like this for so many years that I thought it was nuts. So
wow.
And that is one of the reasons why I literally bring myself forward as a starseed worker for so many, and they will find me. I have never advertised my healing work. They will find me because they're supposed to. And I just had one yesterday, a full-blown starseed, totally unactivated. And this is important because there's many starseeds on this planet right now. And this is the work, is to activate your memory. And it's very difficult to find the correct worker sometimes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot to uncover, just because in mine and like my Rochelle in the comments and a few others, you know, we've so many like synchronicities there. I seen a couple questions, so
Yep.
I'm gonna just kind of go through them. I know Maria had asked if it was in Minnesota, that haunted hotel, which
Yes, it is.
And
it's actually in a town called Sauk Center.
And then we have, was it anemic? Oh, she was asking about if you knew what kind of blood disorder. Did they never found that out?
No, that's what was so amazing. They thought I was anemic. They thought I had mono. They thought I had cancer. They thought I had everything under the sun. And yet nothing aligned with anything. And nothing made it go away. I remember in Catholic school, you did your, first communion in first grade, and I was ostracized at my first communion. I had to be like sat in the back, kind of like quarantined from everybody else because they didn't know if I was, God forbid, catchy, which was a horrible experience. But I have pictures of myself as white as my dress. So it was very blood related and anemic related, but it wasn't anything they ever figured out.
See, it's funny because my childhood too, like that's crazy, but they called it like ITP. One of my siblings had a blood thing, and I had too, but they couldn't tell me. It wasn't anything serious. But
I think a lot of starseeds, in my opinion, at least the ones I've met, have had situations where there has been a health scare or a health issue, or you've always been the one where your body maybe isn't working the same as everybody else in the family. And I do believe that's because most of us haven't had a meat and bone container. And I know for me, all through my 60 years, I have struggled with being in this meat and bone thing. And it was very, very difficult. And only in the last probably 5 years have I been working the meat and bone better, because most starseeds are more comfortable outside of it. Yeah. And it was very important for me to honor the contract that I signed up for planet Earth. And it took me a long time to do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that was kind of then like when you activated that, like through the crystal skull, and is that when you kind of recognized?
No, the very first activation was actually a little prior to that, because I wouldn't have even thought to go to a metaphysical show, because I was a corporate executive that was just thinking my life was normal.
Right.
We thought that was normal back then. And my actual awakening, the download, the cracking of the egg, I was simply being my normal self, walking out of my backyard one day. As my husband was walking out of the garage, I was walking out of the house, and we came upon each other in the driveway. And I exclaimed out of the blue, "Oh my God, you need to figure out your medicine or you're going to die." And I mean, think of how bizarre that is. He's just coming out of the garage from putting something away, and his crazy wife comes out the door and exclaims at the top of her lungs, randomly, "Oh my God, if you don't figure out your meds, you're going to die." And he's like, "What are you talking about, Suzanne? What is going on?" And I said, I can see inside of your body how sick you are. And then I'm like, I can actually see inside your whole body. And then I'm like, why can I see inside of your whole body? And I lost it. I'm like, oh my God. And so it was very weird. It was very weird. And then that download started to come so fast that I ended up going to see an actual, again, there wasn't people like me around. There wasn't even healers at that time to the extent of like things that are common now. Right. I'm sounding ancient, but there really wasn't. And so I ended up just going to a tarot reader to just try to see if I was insane or not, and she said, "No, you're just definitely, whatever." And one thing led to another. And so, but that was my very first activation. And then I started to just play a little bit more and learn and read. And then all of a sudden it was like really weird because I would pick up books and I would already know the book. And it was like, oh, this is so weird. And then I started to play on people's bodies. And then that's what led me to the so-called expo where I saw the skull. So the aliens did not come in immediately. The healing is what started first. Okay. And then the aliens came in probably a year into that.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have, do you also normally have a lower temperature? My blood pressure and my temperature is always like deathly low. They're like, this ain't normal, but it's my normal. And if it's a normal blood pressure, it's high for me. Do you find that?
I love that. I love that we try to use the word normal, by the way, because I don't even know what normal is anymore. Right. But I am not like a Reiki person that holds heat. That I do not do. I actually can hold ether more often, which is actually cool. You know, I being a 61-year-old woman went through menopause, but never had anything. I just slid through everything because I decided I wasn't going to do that. So my body will do heat activations when I'm downloading. They'll do heat activations when I'm fixing circuitry. So I will burn like huge, as my whole body will burn, but not like Reiki hands. Right. But my actual like vitals have always been very normal. So I'm not above or below. I'm just always just like, in fact, my husband struggles a lot with health issues. And he's always like, why are you just always like normal? And that's about the only normal thing I am in his world. So that's kind of funny. Right.
How do you know somebody is a starseed? Are you able to kind of identify?
Oh, in a minute.
Other starseeds? Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great question. And, you know, it's funny because I will watch and I will get a client just like I did yesterday. Brand new client, never saw her before, was adorable, coming for some other issues. And immediately I'm like, have you felt like this? Have you felt like this? So there's some really distinctive questions that I think are, you know, things like, have you, even though you have this gregarious personality and you've always been in the middle of the crowd, have you felt alone a lot? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, have you struggled with your actual meat and bone body throughout your life? Yeah. You know, do you stare at the stars and really yearn for something and you know that there's something else and then you have the sense of mystical depression or a yearn for a family? Oh my God, yeah, you know. So there's very distinctive signs of what a starseed is. And most often they will have very many of the so-called signs. And you can even actually Google that because there's enough information now out on the internet that says, oh, these are starseed attributes. And you don't need to have all of them, obviously, but it's pretty obvious who a starseed is. There's a disconnect. This is one of the biggest ones because I struggled with this my entire life. And I think this is really important to talk about because we self-bash ourselves when we don't understand this. A starseed does not come in with the same level of compassion as a typical human, meaning we are seen oftentimes as kind of disengaged or kind of brash or kind of like a know-it-all or kind of like arrogant or kind of like, you know, you don't really care about anybody. The reality of this is absolutely 100% different. It's not that you don't care about anybody. A really highly skilled starseed will not take on other people's stuff because they know how dangerous that is for energy transference. They will not empath. And they hold empathy at a certain place with an honor to it that is not the same as a typical person. And oftentimes this is misconstrued because people don't understand the qualities of starseed. And so Suzanne oftentimes has been like, well, you just don't care. You don't care. I'm so upset and I'm so worried about my family and you don't care. It's like, no, I actually do care enough to know that your family has the right to this, that, or the other thing. So I don't step into that circle of energy and transfer or vampire that energy because I know how critically important my field is. And so does that make some sense? Are you following that?
A lot. Yes.
Yeah. So the unknowing starseed, okay, feels attacked and feels very bad throughout their life until they start to understand that this is actually a beautiful quality because a lot of outside influencers saying, well, you're not very nice. You know, gosh, you don't care about anybody. And it's like, no, actually, I care so much that I honor the fact that they get to. They get to be sick. They get to be sad. They get to be lonely. They get to be messed up. They get to die. All of these things as they get to. And a true starseed that's trained definitely knows that boundary. Yeah.
I feel like I'm kind of, I have that compassion, but I feel like experiences kind of molded me into that more. And I'm starting to realize that, I'm realizing what energy does and all that. So that is so interesting. And I've actually never heard that before in my research, but I think that is important,
It's
to
huge.
talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm actually in the middle of my second book right now. It's just in the editing stages to go to the publisher. And this book is the Energy Healer's book on empathing, because most people don't even understand what empathing is. And when we have a psychic empath, which is usually starseed related, when we have a psychic empath, this is even a higher caliber of understanding that the skill set of discernment and the boundaries are extremely important, or else you're going to get messed up. And so I think it's going to be a great book, and hopefully it'll come out in the next year here, because I think so many people are confused on empathing versus empathy. Oh, I'm so sad for you. I'm so scared for you. I'm so worried about you. That's not healthy.
Yeah.
We confuse worry with love. And so this is, especially for a psychic empath, which most often is starseed related to some extent, it can be a very dangerous thing in terms of energy transference.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Because I heard a quote. I forgot what TV show. Was it True Blood? Well, I think there's a part there where Pam looks at a counselor or something like that, and she tells them, humans, with your empathy and stuff, that sometimes we get caught up in pain. Pretty much show the most pain at a funeral, you're the best moral person.
Yep.
That type of deal. So is that would you say that type of energy?
Well, see, the starseed and the psychic, the highly sensitive psychic body will be able to immediately feel that pain, because I can walk into the room and I'll suck up everything like a sponge if I choose to. What I'm writing that particular book about is for the normal public to know there's different levels of this stuff, and for that psychic empath to know that this is a dangerous thing. I can acknowledge your pain, but the actual true starseed steps back from that pain as an observer and allows that pain, because there's an honor to that soul contract. You get to have that pain. I have no right to that pain. But the condition of socialization and most often family belief systems, especially when we, meld in religion, take care of everybody else first, and that can be very confusing to us, because we don't know what that word selfish is, and we get very confused. And so this can really affect an empath, especially if they're a psychic empath. And conversely, the starseed can sometimes, if they're more trained and more adept and aware, can be seen as you don't care. And they do care. They just know that that's not their sandbox to play in.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That actually even helps me out with some of the things I've been going through. I don't feel like I've been activated till recently, like last year.
I think a ton of starseeds are activated in the last 3 years. I mean, my client base has just gone boom for amazing people that have been awakening within the last 2 and 3 years. And obviously this isn't by chance, I mean, the planet needs everybody to wake up. So, yeah. And interestingly enough, I think many of the starseeds, and this was something I'm just going to jump ahead. Many starseeds think that they have to be cosmic, oh, I'm out in the cosmos. There's many starseeds that I work with that are actually very 2D, meaning second dimension, meaning plant and animal kingdom, the elemental kingdom. Huge amounts of starseeds are awakening right now that are aligning with their soul purpose of the elemental kingdom. So we don't, just because we're starseed, need to be off planet and on ship all the time. Starseeds can be extremely important, especially right now, to activate themselves, to activate the second dimension, meaning plant and animal kingdom, okay, and the elementals, but also inner earth second dimension, which is the reverse of those, meaning the old, maybe the buried ancients that are coming through that look, oh my God, demonic, and they're not. They're just a different version of the elemental. And so this is an extremely important burst of energy that's been happening in the last 2 years for starseeds.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. It makes so much sense. Most of my astral experiences lately have been the inner earth and these elven looking beings. And they even showed me a hybrid girl baby that was supposedly mine.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, I was like, I feel so. And the night before my mother passed, she had touched, her name's Ka, she touched her finger to my chest and it lit up and a
Wow.
pyramid came out. And I'm just kind of puzzled as to, it's like, I know I feel at home there and I feel intimate with them when I'm there.
Right.
But I'm just still trying to figure all that out. Like,
oftentimes that pyramid will do a boom, 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 like this.
Yes.
And what the pyramid will do is it will activate an actual portal and a line of energy that is a heart connection for you. I've done that oftentimes in Peru, where I've done connections between ley lines, landlines, cosmic, people's bodies, etc. And oftentimes it will come in that this shape, but it will be 3D in terms of
yes.
go, 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 like this. And so what that's doing is it's opening a portal to communicate. Yeah. So this is your heart connection. We have what we would call our silver cord to our higher self and our soul. Right. This is a different kind of a silver cord will go this way. This will be a different kind of a connection or a portal to that other energy or that inner earth. So that's in my world, very common when I do that work. So that's super cool for you. I think one of the people that I suggest for all of my starseeds to look at that are 2D inner earth people is the artist Brian Froud. And he is so amazing. I don't know if you've seen his stuff, but he does all the fairy, good fairies, bad fairies. He does the press fairy book. He has the fairy oracle deck. And his artwork is insanely right on. And his wife writes the information. They're amazing people. And they have tons and tons of stuff out there. So Brian, BrianFroud. And he is somebody that I suggest a lot of my 2D starseeds study in terms of the activation of simply looking at that graphic will make you go, oh yeah, I know that. Oh yeah, I know that. And so I tell starseeds to train themselves. Go and get a Lord of the Rings and fast forward through all the stupid stuff until you get to the fairy realm and just sit with that so that you can remember other kingdoms and you can remember what that feels like. And then buzz through the orcs. You don't need all that crap. You just need the experience of remembering what you know. And that's super important. And other starseeds can do the same thing, Courtney, in terms of I'm more quantum. I can do inner earth and I do a lot of it, but my norm is multidimensional, way far out. And I'm what's called a quantum grid worker. And so I will go and I will look at other things and I will see things like an Avatar, or I will see them in Star Wars movies or Marvel movies, are just like, oh yeah, I've done that a million times, So those are activations for us to remember cellularly what we know in our circuitry. And these are really important things. And this is exactly, by the way, the starseeds that create those products are on this planet. It's their job to activate.
Oh my gosh. So much to absorb. I love this. I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool. So, aliens, UFOs.
Yeah. I've seen them my entire life. I am a starseed, by the way, that does not get abducted, and I will not. I've never been scared of that. I've never been taken. I don't believe that, Suzanne's body gets taken from her house and, blah, blah. I go. And so this is a difference also. Some people get taken. And I think a lot of true starseeds don't get taken. They go because we're working, especially I know I am, in multi-dimensions at the same time. I am on planet as well as off planet all the time. I'm on ship as well as down here all the time. And so I've been shown that for many, many years. And I go on ship all the time to do work. And I know when I'm on ship. And I know I'm on ship, even though I'm down here being Suzanne at the same time. So that's been a lot of really important training over the years, because you can start to lose your mind when you really start to remember who you are. And you can go through, this is very important for starseeds to understand, that they have a community or a person or a worker or somebody that they can talk to, because you can get to mystical depression very quickly for a number of reasons. The beginning of starseed, you want to go out. Oh, I want to go out. I want to go find my starseed home. And we want to go out. And this is why a lot of us are activated in the spiritual chakras and not the actual physical plane chakras. Hence why we don't like this body. the important thing to remember is you signed up for a planet.
Right.
It's our job to be in this physical body on this planet. So it took me a very long time to understand. Every time I would go out, I would be sad when I came back in, and then I would be angry with this thing. So many years ago, I decided to integrate inward and integrate out in, bring it into heart space and expand heart space so that you're anchored here. And this is extremely important because it will release that feeling of I'm alone and somebody left me on a flippin' planet, you know? So this is very important. Now, the bigger that you get and the harder that you play out there, you can go back and have experiences where you have multiple memories. And starseeds can be very, very vulnerable to memories of mass planetary destruction, especially if you come from like the Nibiru, the Orion race, the Syrian race, the Lyran race. If you came through the electric wars, you can be very, very susceptible to all that Armageddon programming and that feeling of, oh my God, I blew up a planet. So these are very important stages for you to understand. That may be a part of who I am in soul, but I'm still Suzanne sitting here in White Bear Lake, Minnesota, being a mom. You gotta do that separately. And that integration is very careful so that you don't lose your marbles.
That is excellent advice.
Yeah.
Excellent. And would you say all star seeds kind of carry the same qualities, like from different areas, like say Orion, Pleiades, Arcturus? Are there subtle differences, would you say, or would you say they all kind of have the same? That's okay.
Got allergy going on here. Everybody, in my opinion, I love when people are getting into the star seed realm and they'll go and they'll meet with somebody and they'll go, oh, so-and-so told me I was from Pleiades. And I'm like, well, we're all from Pleiades. It's like maybe equate it to being human. We're all a mishmash of everything. I mean, we've had multiple lifetimes. And so to just say I'm from Pleiades to me is kind of funny. Right. And I'm not making fun of anybody, but I think that that's kind of adorable. A lot of people say they're from Pleiades because indeed Pleiadian race is the most recent race that came forward, where all of the other bloodlines came together from different races prior to, and planetary timelines and existences, to come forward to be the guardians of this planetary system. And so, yeah, in some regard, we're all Pleiades. But I think people do Pleiades because it feels fluffy and it feels kind and it feels nice, which is great. I don't resonate at all to Pleiades, and I never have. I've known from the beginning that mine goes way back into the ancient way before we even existed in a thought. And mine, I've had rememberings that are not nice. I did a lot of work to remember some really crappy stuff that I was involved in as far as hybrid examining, experimentation, seeding planets, etc. And it took me a long time to understand that that doesn't mean anything for this personality in this lifetime, except information. And so we always like to say, oh, I'm a Pleiadian, or oh, I'm a Syrian. Basically, we're all in everything, just like we are when we're human. And so I think that's important to say. But if you want to, if it rings your bell to be Pleiades, that's cool. So.
Wow. Okay. I was just wondering, because when I Google like the white-haired beings that I come into contact with, it kind of, or the Nordic, very Nordic looking, it's always shows up Pleiades. So I'm like, oh, well.
And I think the reason is, Courtney, is because that's your most recent memory of who you've been. Or your also most recent memory of who you're going to be. And all of us will be right around that Pleiadian Nordic time, because that's the most recent of who we've been as a race and where we're going as a race. And so a lot of people will gravitate towards that particularly, if that makes some sense.
I'm thinking I need to do your little workshop thing here.
I should do a whole workshop on starseeds, maybe specifically.
Yeah, I think it would help so many people, because just the information that, thank you so much, because that's big for a lot of us that are here grouped trying to figure this out. And I think that like information could be imperative for some people. And
remember, we'll put a personality spin on things. No one wants to say I'm a horrible reptilian Orion. But the reality is I have huge memory of being an Orion. But there's also, even in the Orion faction, and these are dumb words, but we have no other words to use as humans right now. There's good Orions and bad Orions. There's good reptilians and bad reptilians. And those are silly words in truth. But the reality is there's good humans and there's bad humans. And so this is important for us to know, oh, I would gravitate towards that Palladian feeling because it feels like I'm nicer. You know, who wants to say they're the crappy reptilian that came and, you know, destroyed blah, blah, blah. And so these are also reasons why people will gravitate. So I always just say, I don't put a lot of stock in any of that. I've also never put a lot of stock in like giving a guide a name and having to see a face. It just isn't my thing, but maybe it's yours, or maybe it's one of your listeners, and that's cool. So if it's important to you and you want to truly find I'm a blah, blah, that's great. And there's no rules to this. There is information out there, even on the internet, that you can Google, what kind of a starseed am I? And they have these little like almost horoscope type things, and you will see what you gravitate towards the most. And again, that may be your most recent memory. And so I've done enough work where I've gone back to, I do timeline work and I do wormhole work and I go back into the grids. I work in the quantum grids. And so in that, this is what I do for my own self, not for my job as a practitioner. So my soul work, I go into the quantum field and I do all kinds of timeline manipulation and holographic inserts and reversal programming, et cetera. So I've jumped multiple timelines. Therefore, I've seen every single solitary piece of every single everything, which has been extremely overwhelming sometimes. But now I've gotten much more balanced and adept at that and not had to own, oh my God, I participated in blowing up that planet, you know? So it's important to get to a place where you know that this may indeed be a past life, or it may be just a memory that you're actually reading the record of.
Okay.
So it's a lot of training to be able to not take home guilt association from anything.
Emotions. Yeah. My oldest son, he diehard has dreams and he goes, I am reptilian. Like he just point blank, I am reptilian. And I'm going, I totally am. I know I am. But I'm not just reptilian either. I mean, I do, up at the Palmer House, I do a lot of what we would call morphing, and I let my body actually bring things through. And I've brought through unbelievable amounts of different starseed races, from tentacle gross things to literally computerized light beings to energy signatures that are simply light. I mean, it's a fascinating opportunity to be a human body and let that happen. Again, be extremely trained, or you can mess yourself up really bad. But I do like a holographic projection, and the people at the event are actually watching my being change into these unbelievable different starseed races. And it's been quite fascinating to be able to experience that over the years. Yeah. Oh, I can imagine. Oh my gosh.
And it feels really weird because you can remember, in my meat body can remember, oh yeah, that's what it felt like to have gills. Oh yeah, that's what it felt like to have a tail. So it's very weird, but it's kind of cool. I mean, I feel grateful that I'm, able to do that for others. So yeah.
I'd like to be you for a day.
Sometimes, no.
So I'm just going to look at our peoples, see what they're saying. Oh, yes, we read that one. And thank you. Grateful for you too, my sister. And Blue Moon says she had depression for a while, about 10 years ago. I'd go out in dreams, then come back when I woke up, but I didn't know what it was until my psychic friend told me.
Yeah, mystical depression is really typical for a starseed, especially when we go out and out in. And it's very difficult also because you have remembering of personalities, etc. So it's a hard thing to navigate, especially if you're alone. So again, I'm grateful that you're giving a platform that allows people to know that this is not an easy journey, and oftentimes it takes some support.
Yeah. That's what this is all about. Do you think?
Yeah, I just read it. I think that activation of starseeds is gigantic right now because it's coming from all areas. You have what is known as your original indigo starseeds, is somebody like my age, and in their 60s, is like, I'm like an old school one, meaning that my physical Suzanne body holds a lot of the work that I do. So when I'm doing a quantum grid, for example, my body will hold on to that grid work until it's done, which does not, by the way, you don't want to be me then, because it sucks. Your body gets hit. Now, most people coming in like your age and obviously a lot younger are transitioning. They're different kinds of starseeds. They mostly work with intention. They mostly are very telepathically moving with intention. They don't need to use this physical form the same way. I have a different job here on this planet to experience the embodiment with the meat and the bone and then send that information back. It's part of my contract. So most starseeds at this time are doing it with intention. So yes, you're activating one another by just meeting one another, by coming in proximity to one another, by working through the collective in the 4D realm and dream states. So yes, we're here to activate one another. And then the children of our children, like my grandchild is only 4 and she's just a little star baby right out of the gate. She's already seeing dead people and the blue man and the, this and that. And I'm like, yeah. So, it's beautiful to be able to see this coming to a place where it's more quote unquote normal, so that we don't shut down those young star seeds and that we activate them right out of the gate, because this is what's going to change the planet. So yeah,
I agree completely. Like I've always stressed, when my kids come to me, oh mom, I seen an ET. I'm always like, oh yeah, tell me about it.
exactly.
And versus, oh, that's your imagination or a bad dream. We've talked about this before, because that could potentially hinder some of like their spiritual growth or evolution or what have you.
Oh, completely. And that's why they end up in my office when they're 40 and they're confused, So yes, very much.
Oh, wow. It all, you just made like everything kind of make more sense for me.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, thank you for that.
Yeah.
How would you describe your personal spirituality?
I grew up Catholic and then a little more Catholic, and it always confused me when I was little, because everything they'd tell me to do as a child, I would do the opposite, like bow your head and my little head go this way, and I'm not knocking Christianity or Catholicism, because there's threads of truth in everything. Right. But mine has been definitely stepped away from anything in terms of anything that is in a box. And I don't think that I even at this point, people are like, how much do you meditate? There's a lot of times when I don't do any meditating anymore, because I've bridged it to being meditative, being present every second and doing what I'm called to do and being, aware. My spirituality has turned, and my work has turned so quantum over the last years that, there was a time, and I think everyone evolves, and I think our world evolves. There was a time when I would do methodical work. For example, if I was going to clear a house of negative energy or an entity, I'd go room by room and you'd sage it and you'd do the. Now I can just close my eyes and it's done in like 2 seconds, because it's all a hologram. Everything to me at this point is holographic grid work. And so it's so much quicker and faster and easier. And this is a beautiful thing, because we've opened up multiple timelines and we can traverse things at quantum rates of speed, and we can change things instantaneously. Now that's a great thing, but it's also a very dangerous thing if you're uneducated and you're not working the law of attraction correctly. So it's very, very important if you are not understanding how this works, because we're all manifesting what we don't want very quickly.
I see. Okay. Yeah, because I don't know how a lot of it works. I recently had an astral dream of the men in black chasing me, and I was going through wormholes, but yep. I knew with my mind I was causing it, and I would even turn back and shut them. Like,
yep.
But
yep. And who's to say it was a dream, by the way?
My dead aunt showed up in that dream, and she goes, "You need to wake up now, Courtney, or they're going to get you, and it will happen for real." And I'm like, oh, and yeah.
And you were probably just closing timelines. I mean, what we don't understand is this quantum world is so real. Like my daughter that I said, I have a situation with her where she all of a sudden had a panic attack in her car one day, and she hasn't been able to drive for almost a year, until all of a sudden I brought her back to the scene, and she had a warped wrinkle timeline that she drove through. And she was half in one timeline and half in another time for 1 year, until we started to really analyze what the heck was going on. And I went and I undid the timeline and put her back into her body fully and closed the loop in the area, and it completely changed, and she hasn't had any trouble since. And yet here she suffered for 1 year, going through medicine, traditional doctors, going to psychotherapy. And it's like, this is just energy. And I'm not knocking Western medicine. Yes, check yourself out. Yes, go through the process. But energy is everything. And so it's very important for us to understand nobody in a doctor's office is going to tell you, you just walked through a warp wrinkle of multiple timelines and you're stuck in one. I mean, it just doesn't happen, right?
Ooh, that to that. Yes.
Yeah. So these are important issues that hopefully the more this world opens up, the quicker that we can all converge to do our job and get this stuff in line, because we're in multiple timelines right now, which is very different than what our training is as a human, meaning I have a past, I have a future that I want, and that's all I'm worried about, because neither of those exist. The only thing that exists is you present. And this is where the power is, and none of us can get that. So it's really important. Yeah.
I'm loving this. Wow. Are you a fan of tarot or any other forms of divination?
I love to play with anything and everything. If I flip the camera on, I got cards upon cards upon cards. I don't necessarily tout myself as a tarot reader. I mostly play. I just did a tarot read for somebody yesterday. I have a billion stones. I have a bazillion different things. I teach, especially at the Palmer House, that toys and tools are very important, but ultimately you are the tool. And so I have graduated to becoming the tool myself very much. But I think that it is important to engage with things. I'm going to grab something here. Engage with things that are important. I got a little head recently. Here we go. His name is Baby Einstein, and he's from Carolyn Ford. I put eyeballs in him. He doesn't really have them. I stuck those in. They're little jewels. But anyway, he's downloaded from another huge crystal skull that I was introduced to in Sedona probably 4 years ago, called Einstein. And Einstein is phenomenally powerful. So that great divination tool. He's a mini version. I can get all kinds of information from him. Can Suzanne get the information without Baby Einstein? Of course I can. So this is a focus tool. This is anything in divination is a focus tool. But what I will say around that whole subject matter is, it is important if we choose, and you always get to choose. I'm never here to be somebody's truth, okay? But if you choose to understand ritual and divination is important. We have lost that as an art, and therefore our actual connection to the cosmos has changed. You know, the indigenous used to make, their day was about making crystal grids. Their day was about training from the land. Their day was about connecting cosmos to a planet, and we're the middle. And so we've lost a lot of that. And so I do lots of ritual in that regard and lots of grid patterns, because this is what opens our portals to the cosmic realms. And we have lost that as a culture. And so, you know, those are the weird people. You're going to go do a read. You're going to grab a rock for the day. This is all kind of kitschy still. And so when we remember this is actually not divination tools, this is actually tools for life, then things will change again.
I agree. I completely agree. I love that. Sorry, somebody asked you, it's very random, but does blue spark mean anything?
Blue spark. Nothing resonates for me for that. Is it, I guess I would need to know what that.
Julie, she saw them when she was pregnant.
Oh, she saw blue sparks? Well, for me, anything will come to you in whatever package is recognizable for you from a higher source. And so oftentimes if we're seeing the blue spark in our work, or if they're coming to us, oftentimes that can be literally how that starseed race is coming in. They will not necessarily come in an apparition. They will not most of the time come in a body. Mine come in geometrics. Mine come in sparks a lot. And I'm a quantum worker. So when somebody gets work done by me, lots of times it feels like electricity, because I actually use plasma, electricity, geometrics, etc., and go into the circuitry of the body. And a lot of times things feel like that. So sometimes we'll see things in a spark kind of a way, or an electric kind of a way, if we're more starseed. So to me, if that makes any sense to what she's asking, a lot of times it will come in because you're more electric. Now, if you are more electric, I would also suggest, if you're struggling in anything in life, to be very aware that the counterbalance to your electricity needs to be your magnetized side, which is electric here, magnet down here. So again, the starseed likes this because it's way more fun. And it's very important for us to understand I signed up to be magnetized to a planet too. So therein lies the balance.
I need to find that, because I'm the one, I want to be up there all the time, like here all the time. Yeah. So have you traveled anywhere interesting that you'd like to share? Maybe another country, or do you
Yeah,
have
we talked prior to coming online that I did go to Ireland, and it wasn't the greatest in a 3D experience. However, I was sharing with Courtney that the one thing that did happen in Ireland is they downloaded me in terms of the fairy realm. And so what that means for me is in semi-sleep state, I had probably about a 4 to 5 hour experience of what we would call downloading. So when that happens to a Suzanne body, not everybody does it the same way, but that means that my body, like literally, it looks almost like I'm convulsing, and it scares some people if they don't know what that is, but mine is a circuitry thing, and I hold it in my grids. And so I will convulse and flip and flop. And what they were doing, I was explaining to Courtney, it was almost like going through Wikipedia page after page after page of each of the individual kinds of fairies and or fae that was involved in the Ireland for all of whatever purposes. And it comes to me like on warp speed download, like page after page after page. And then my body goes, brrr, and then I just wake up and I know stuff. So that happens to me a lot. So that's what happened in Ireland. Other than that, we were at some pretty magical places, but we weren't with a group. I was trying to be a participant, and it's a little hard for me to be a participant when I've been a tour leader and a teacher. And I was trying really hard to pull back and not do the work, you know? And yeah, so it was not my, I would like to go back under a different, I guess, situation. Where I do love, and I go every year, is Peru. And I have been to Peru for the last 6 years. And I have done client work, and I run my own tour in Peru for the last 6 years. Only because of COVID, I'm not going right this second. And I'm dying to go back because Peru, for me, has been that was the turning point for this physical Suzanne meat body to recognize the fact that I needed to, and I don't say that word very often, get into this physical form and get into the actual Pachamama or Mother Earth or Gaia energy in order to balance it. When I first met the shamans there, it was super funny because, you know, they're beautiful, lovely people that come out of the hills, and they're so powerful and they're so tiny and they are so magnetic that when I actually sat next to one of them the first time, we were both like going, and tears streaming down. And I said, yeah, welcome to meeting an alien. And he's like, what, who are you? Because my frequency was so different. And now that I've worked with them for 6 years, they tagged me Healer of the Sky because they know that I work in the quantum realm, and it's just a different playing field. Nobody's better or worse. Nobody's different. Nobody's weird. We just do different jobs. And so now we have synergized very, very well together. And that tour is probably one of the most powerful things I've done. I have gone into caves and done out-of-body experiences that were like Indiana Jones times 10. I've had, and we can maybe talk another time in depth about Peru experiences, because the thing that I did in one of the caves one time, it was unbelievable. And literally I came out like a X-Men with like gray hair. I was like, what the heck? Yeah, it was crazy. So it was some wicked stuff. Wicked.
Well, we're about halfway through, but we are going over an hour. Do you want to continue, or would you like to maybe do a part 2 at a later time?
We can do a part 2 on other, crazier stuff, because I know that you have other questions for sure. I mean, I think we could do a part 3 and 4 and 5, because there's many things that are, and it doesn't make me again special by any means, but I think it's important that people don't think they're nuts. I mean, I thought I was crazy for a really long time, and I did not understand how powerful it was for me to go to another place in the country. I specifically don't go until my body feels like it's called to go. And when my body is feels like it's called to go, unbelievable synchronicity happens. And when we do part 2, I'll tell you the thing that happened with the rocks in Arizona, because that was a completely bizarre thing that changed my life and confused the hell out of me. And then it was very, very interesting for me to experience those. I get called in those situations, like you're going. And sometimes, depending on the level of work, I'm a pretty clean worker, but I'm not one of these spiritual people that goes, I have to be clean all the time. I mean, I'm totally down with having my bottle of wine at the fire with my friends. I don't, I will eat whatever I want to when I want to. But I also am very clear that if I'm doing work and they want me clean, that I will go through a cleanse and I will take that very seriously, et cetera. So I'm very clean in my field. and in my body when it needs to ramp up. And so I've had situations where they are, you know, you've got something to do and this is freaking big and it's going to take a hit. And sometimes in the instances of the ones that happen in Peru and especially Arizona, my physical body was like racked. And I mean, it was really difficult. My physical body, after I morph at the Palmer House, and I have, you know, I'll do 3 rounds of morphing because we'll have like each group comes through. And after I have, you know, multiple entities and multiple dead people come through my body, I look like hell. I mean, you know, I look like my grandma ran over me. You know, I'm growing grandma and she got ran over by a train. I mean, it's hard. It's not easy. And I choose to do that for the moment in time because nothing is more sacred than bringing somebody's loved one through. I mean, I am grateful. And so for me to be able to bring a geometric and place it into the ground in Peru because I'm told to, even though it takes a hit, is I will take that hit. And then I will take care of myself following. So, you know, that kind of quantum work is not easy. And I don't know a whole lot of people that do it, if anybody. Actually, I do have practitioner friends that are very close with me that we will call hold space for me to do it. And again, it doesn't make me special because I do this work, but I do need sometimes those people to hold that point of light so that I can indeed find my way back into this meat body. I don't think I'll ever be stuck out there and actually, you know, not come back, but it is a grounding mechanism for me in not just a physical way, but more so an emotional and spiritual way. And so I do, in those cases of really big projects like that, oftentimes I have friends that help.
Yeah. That is amazing. You are an extraordinary person. Like you came here and you're like, figured out your mission. You're on it.
You know, and here's what I'm going to tell you. Again, it doesn't make me cool or special, but I asked when I was first in my journey of being a starseed worker, and especially I wasn't a quantum worker at first. And all of a sudden I started to see things and I would say, why are you showing? I would have a client on the table and all the star beings would come in and I would see them all around. And then all of a sudden I was seeing different things. And I'm like, I want to know why you're showing me this. And so I argue with my guidance all the time. I mean, I don't do things until you tell me why I'm doing them because I'm tenacious about making sure that I'm not working in trickster mode. And this is a very important thing to understand. If you're a highly skilled quantum worker, you better have your stuff together and know that you're in integral mode, that you are not being hijacked or tricked because there's so much crap out there that's reversed and introverted. And, you know, I've pissed off the Dracos like you can't believe. I have some other workers that I work with, and when we do some big stuff, and I mean big, they get pissed. And you can feel my whole room just go, and then I'm like, no.
Is that when dread? Will you feel like a heavy, like,
dread, and all of a sudden something came in and you're scared and everything stops and it's, this is when you need to make a choice. You need to make a choice in terms of the universal law says that you are not allowed in my space if I'm doing my homework to lock down my space. If I'm ignorant, which I was at the beginning and didn't lock down my space, then shame on me. And shame, it's, you know, this is not about scared. Be very clear. This is not about scared, but the bigger that you are, the bigger they are. The bigger you play, the bigger they play. And this is about getting, when you're at the level of quantum work in this, you better darn well know your integral line of truth barometer, because trickster energy is very difficult. And right now, by the way, there's so many, I don't know if you monitor a lot of online other channelers or people that are bringing through information, but if you've recognized what I've recognized in the last year of COVID and on, people's channels have been hijacked beyond belief, and they are so spewing out crap that is 100% programmed. And I'm like, dude, you're not even integral anymore. I mean, I have shut off so many of my things that I used to study because it's just like, no. So you need to, in my opinion, get to choose to come to a place of integrity that says, I know with every ounce of my meat body and my bone and my essence that this is integral work and that I'm in the space of truth. And this is super important. And I do not take that lightly at all. And so I've had very many situations where the Dracos did come into my room that one time and they came in force. And my girlfriend was like, oh, holy crap, what did we just do? And I stood up and I'm like, you know, by universal law, you're not allowed in my room. I will allow you into my room tonight when I'm ready. sure as shit, sorry, they came in.
Oh, you're fine.
Sure as heck, they came in at 3 o'clock in the morning into my bedroom. And all of a sudden I'm like, and for 2.5 seconds back then, I was still like, I might have like maybe opened the door too much here. And then I said, no, this is sovereignty. And I got up and I said, back out of my room until I locked down for my integral level, which they did. And they backed out. And then I invited them in. And And then I found this place, and this has forever changed my world. This is years ago now, a couple years, probably about 4 years ago. I wormholed in that situation all the way back to the essence of my being of God source. And it was phenomenal. It was just like all the way back. And as I did that, it was like a past life review of every single solitary essence of who I've been and who they've been. And what happened was, and I can barely get this out, was compassion. It was love. It was so unexpected that I looked at them in my room and I said, there's nothing about you that scares me. I actually love you because I know you. And they literally crumbled like dust. And I'm like, I just sat in my room. I'm like, I don't even know what happened. I don't even know what happened. I don't know what happened. And it was so amazing that I sat there like, holy crap. And so basically what I'm getting at is love always wins is not a cliche. It's a truth.
I agree. I agree.
So then what happened is the next night, it happened again, 3 o'clock in the morning. But then who came was the Lizard King himself, the top man of the Dracos, the biggest, baddest dude ever. And I sat up and I did the same exact thing again. And I said, you didn't seem to hear me last night. I love you. And he was gone. And I have never, since that time period, feared that love doesn't win, ever. And so starseed work can be very scary, and trickster work and controller programming and the factions that we've got going on right now and all the shit they put into the grid systems and the reversal programs and the dark energy, that can all be really scary unless you remember you have sovereignty because you choose it.
Right.
It's super important to find that power within you that says, no, universal law is on my side, but I need to command that. And not do I need to, I get to, because I'm choosing it. That's the biggie.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so powerful. Like,
it was life altering for me. And to be able to go back and see every horrific thing that I've been involved in and actually forgive myself, because it really wasn't even me, but to forgive humanity as a whole for all the crap we've done to ourselves. I mean, we have made such a mess of this planet and of this culture and of our mind. And we have given away our freedom and our power over and over and over again. Because why? Because it's all a false matrix. And it's about time somebody starts understanding that this is real. And so I work a lot on my online community. It's called Vibe Tribe. And I do it online. It's a subscription, like $30 a month. And it has like 6 modules. And I do it every single month. And it comes with an energy update, specific meditation for the information, a training video. And it always includes a live webcast. So it's all archivable. But if you can't get to it, you can always just get on the webcast. And about 3 months ago, I was doing the webcast, and sometimes I teach way bigger on the webcast. And this particular night, I was teaching how false matrices work. How does the quantum hologram work? And why do we get tricked? And I was teaching it on a whiteboard. And I'm telling you, the next couple hours after that, and I'm like, oh, crap. And so again, I like to give people my experiences, not as warnings, but as of examples that even though I'm really diligent and I am quite skilled, and that isn't arrogance, it's just years of practice, I got my ass kicked following that. Because why? Because I opened, and this is for you too, I opened a collective field that actually engaged in information so much with so many people that it was vulnerable. So me, as the web person, now does a very much call in prior to and says, I'm going to lock down this collective space, and I'm going to be in charge of this collective space during this teaching moment. And then I will release it to let anybody do what they choose. So it's our responsibility as a teacher or a practitioner I lock down my space every day when I work. I have for 15 years, 15 plus years, locked down my space every single time I work. And I cut it in between every client, and I cut it at the end. Because why? Because my client deserves to go home free. That's important. So these are really, I think, steps that we're getting more advanced, and we're getting more aware, and we're getting more trained, but that means the playing field's getting bigger, you know? So, and that again is not, don't make it scary, you know, don't make everything scary.
Yeah.
And don't be ignorant, because it isn't all about rainbows and bunnies coming out of your butt either, because this is,
Right.
that's the other side of the channel, is that I was hearing through all the COVID year, oh, it's all about love. And I'm like, no, you still got to have a sword. I mean, come on. So there's really this very much balance between, you know, it's dark and light, dark and light. And again, dark does not have to mean evil.
Right. Right.
So.
Oh my gosh. And so much that I wrote about, like you talked about, but I didn't even realize it. Like, it's almost like I didn't even write it, but the things you're saying just make so much more sense.
Right.
And you teach these on your website, correct?
I teach all of those things that I'm talking about, usually through my Vibe Tribe community. And so what that is they will get, every single month I pull a tarot card for the theme of the month. And it's amazing because I pull it blind, and every single solitary time it makes sense for what's going on. It's just, I love how that works, you know? And so I'll pull a tarot, and then that is the umbrella of the actual work for the month. And then underneath that comes training videos, webcasts, meditations, etc. So that's where I teach. And then that webcast is live every month. So my community, and if they're local, they'll get together, like, for example, for a solstice or whatever. Hopefully we're back to normal on that. But yeah, I mean, it's really important, in my opinion, to find people that are like-minded. And I'll never forget, we did a Vibe Tribe gathering one time, and it was so cute because one of the gals came in and she was new to the community, and she's like, I'm kind of nervous coming in by myself. I just don't know if I'll fit in. I mean, I don't know if I can admit that I see, you know, purple blobs around me all the time. And I go over there because she sees green ones. And I mean, it was so much fun because, you know, everybody's got something, and it's all the same stuff in a different package. So I love that.
Oh, I do too. Oh my gosh, how great would that be, you know? And then if everybody like realized it, like how great would that be? And like,
wouldn't it be so cool to, like, you know, my dream in life is to see, like, for example, an energetic practitioner walking through the halls of the hospitals or walking through the halls of the nursing homes and just clearing. They don't even have to walk through. They can just be telepathic like me in terms of just do it, to clear. And we don't clear anything. We don't clear this planet enough. And this is just layers and layers and layers of old crap. And so we know what that's like. So it would be lovely to see World News Tonight end on a note of, hey, the solar flares are really up and the Schumann resonance is kicking your ass. So don't worry if your joints hurt tonight. You know, I mean, it would be really nice instead of thinking, oh my God, my joints hurt. I must be sick. And now the doctor doesn't know what I have, so I must be dying. So this ascension process is extremely real, and no one necessarily tells us that it's real. And when we're having all of these symptoms, especially if we're starseed, we have so many experiences and symptoms that aren't what we would call normal in the world of Western medicine. So therefore, oftentimes we think we're dying, and then God forbid we're great manifestors and we can get that sick that quick, you know. So it's really important for us to have the knowledge.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm excited for our next ones, but sadly I'd keep you here all day, but I do have to start wrapping it up
okay.
for today. So does anybody have any last minute questions for Suzanne before we go? The dizziness and fatigue, yeah, and then aches, like
absolutely ascension symptoms. And I do have a blog on my website, and if people are really struggling, there's two things on my website: the blog on ascension symptoms, and go back to the very beginning. There's a whole series of them, and there's probably 1,000 posts on there of things that people are experiencing. I mean, from crazy to just, you know, aches. And so these are very, very real. There's also a full ebook on my website that's free on ascension. And so if you don't understand ascension, and especially if you're a starseed in any way, shape, or form, or psychic, please consider educating yourself on it. And again, I'm not here to be your wherewithal truth. I'm just here to share my experiences and be of advice. Make sure that you are honoring your own truth at all times and being diligent in your own integrity, because no one is here to be your truth. No one can be your truth. And so find that aha moment in your own meat body.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Suzanne. And you've given excellent advice. So gratitude for that. Like, everyone give her a like. And her website is in the description and in the chat. So if you want to go and check that out.
And play around on it, you know? I mean, seriously, just play around on it. And my book is on there too, The Energy Healer's Book of Dying. And it is an awesome guide to anybody that is struggling with someone that they've lost or that they've gone through sickness with. But it's also for anybody to just read, because we are all going to leave this planet sometime. And so it's a great opportunity to learn about Akashic records and soul contracts, etc. So all of that is on my site. So feel free to navigate away. Okay. And reach out if you need anything. I loved this. This was, I really honor the fact that you allowed this conversation, because I've done a lot of book interviews that kind of skirt this, but starseeds is a very specific thing. And like I said, there's a million new stories to come if we choose to do more. So,
I would love that, because that's what I want. I'm like, I want this. Like, bring it out. Tell me. Well, thank you guys so much. This was so great and fun. And as always, I love you guys. And we will see you next time. Keep an eye out.
Thank you. Suzanne. Cosmic hugs, everybody.
Bye-bye.